All right, today we're going to tackle one of biology's greatest puzzles, the virus. You know, they're often called the living dead of the natural world, which sounds pretty dramatic. So, are these tiny little invaders actually alive, or are they something else completely? Let's dive in.
So this is it. This is the big question we're going to investigate today. And it's a mystery that has stumped scientists for more than 100 years. Mostly because, as you're out to see, viruses just don't seem to play by the normal rules of life.
So, to figure out if something is actually alive, the first thing you have to do is understand what it's even made of. So, that's our first step. Let's crack one of these things open and see what's really going on inside.
You know, the first thing that just jumps out at you when you look at a diagram like this is just how simple a virus is. I mean, it is radically minimalist. Forget all the complex parts and pieces you'd see in a cell. We're looking at something that is unbelievably basic. You've got your genetic material, that's the squiggly stuff on the inside, and then you have an outer protein coat protecting it. And that's it. That's the entire machine. So here's the absolute key takeaway. Every single virus, no matter what kind, boils down to just two essential parts. You've got the genetic material, which is basically the blueprint, and that can be either DNA or RNA. And then you have that outer shell made of protein, which is called a capsid. Its only job is to protect the code inside. That is the whole package. And this really shows you just how universal that design is. It doesn't matter what shape they are, whether you're looking at a roundish virus that uses RNA or this more geometric-looking one that uses DNA, the basic idea is exactly the same. It's just genetic code wrapped up in some protein, nothing more. And because they are so ridiculously simple, viruses can't actually do anything on their own. They don't have an engine, they don't have a factory, they have no way to make copies of themselves. So what do? They become the ultimate biological hijackers. They have to invade a living cell and completely take over its internal machinery, forcing that cell to stop whatever it was doing and start pumping out more and more viruses. Okay, so we've got a handle on what a virus is made of. Now, to see where it fits in the grand scheme of things, we need to pull up the official scientific checklist. You know, what does it actually take to be considered alive? You might be surprised, but science has a pretty clear definition for what life is. To be officially called a living organism, something has to carry out 7 key life processes. We're talking about things like metabolism, growth, reproduction, responding to the world around it. But here's the most critical part. It has to do all of that by itself. It can't outsource the work. And wow, this table really just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got a living cell. It's got a nucleus, the control center. The virus? Nothing. The living cell is filled with all this cytoplasm and little tiny organs called organelles that do all the work. The virus? It's totally empty inside. And maybe most importantly, a living cell makes its own energy. A virus has to steal it. The difference couldn't be more clear. So, to put it as simply as possible, a virus is missing all the fundamental machinery of life. It has no nucleus, no cytoplasm, no organelles, not even a proper cell membrane. It really is just a simple little shell with a set of instructions tucked inside. Okay, we've looked at the anatomy of a virus. We've gone over the official rules for what makes something alive. We have all the evidence in front of us. So, what's the final verdict? Are they or aren't they? And there you have it. The scientific consensus is pretty definitive on this one. Viruses are not considered living things. They just don't meet the basic criteria for life. In fact, they aren't even included in the biological classification system with all the plants, animals, and bacteria. They're literally in a category all their own. So let's just quickly recap the case against viruses being alive. It really boils down to these 3 key reasons. 1, they aren't made of cells, and all known life is. 2, they are completely dependent. They absolutely have to hijack a host to make copies. And 3, they're just too simple. Genetic code in a protein box just isn't enough to carry out the complex processes of life all on its own. But this is what makes them so fascinating. Because while they aren't technically alive by the textbook definition, they aren't just dead inert chemicals either. They exist in this weird, spooky twilight zone, this gray area between the living and the non-living. And honestly, this debate isn't totally settled, because some recently discovered giant viruses are so complex, they're actually making some scientists rethink the very definition of life itself. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If they're not alive, but they can evolve and replicate and cause so much chaos in the living world, then what in the world are they? Maybe they're nature's ultimate biological puzzle.